The night the law disappeared, inside Nazi Germany's deadliest prison decision. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. In early September of 1943, as Berlin endured another long season of air raids and uncertainty, something happened far from the front lines. Not in the streets, not on a battlefield, but behind thick walls, under official seals, and in the name of the law. On one single night, nearly 200 people disappeared from the records of the German state. Their removal was not chaotic. It was orderly, documented, authorized. What makes this moment linger in history is not only what happened, but how calmly it was carried out, and how many institutions played their role without hesitation. This is not a story about war in the traditional sense. It is a story about decisions, about authority without restraint, and about what becomes of justice when it no longer protects people, but processes them. The question we must confront is simple and deeply uncomfortable. When power defines legality, who is left to defend humanity? Plötzensee prison did not begin as a place associated with terror. When it opened in the 19th century, it functioned like many other state prisons in Germany, holding common offenders and political detainees under conventional legal standards. Its transformation was gradual, shaped not by a single decision, but by a series of choices made after 1933, when the new regime began reshaping institutions to serve power rather than restraint. As the state consolidated control, the legal system was reorganized to prioritize loyalty and conformity. Courts that once operated with procedural safeguards were turned into instruments of ideological enforcement. Trials became shorter, outcomes increasingly predictable. Language shifted. Sentences were framed not as punishment, but as necessary measures for national security. Plötzensee, located close to the political center of Berlin, became a crucial endpoint in this system. Prisoners sentenced by special courts were transferred there with efficiency. Appeals technically existed, but few were meaningfully reviewed. Files accumulated on desks, unresolved, while individuals waited in isolation. By the early 1940s, Plötzensee had become the primary site where the state carried out its most severe penalties, hidden from public view, but fully embedded in the machinery of governance. By 1943, Germany's position in the war was deteriorating. Air raids over Berlin intensified, and with them came a growing sense of urgency within the leadership. Acts of resistance, real or perceived, were treated as existential threats. Even small expressions of dissent were no longer tolerated. The system responded not with reflection, but with acceleration. In early September, bombing raids damaged parts of Berlin, including sections of Plötzensee. From a purely administrative standpoint, this disruption might have justified a pause. Instead, it provoked anger. The concern was not the safety of prisoners or staff, but the interruption of an ongoing process. Hundreds of individuals remained under sentence, their cases unresolved. From the perspective of authority, the delay itself was the problem. Orders moved swiftly through official channels. Pending appeals were dismissed in bulk. Instructions were issued directly to the prison to proceed without hesitation. What followed was not improvisation or breakdown, but an intensified version of routine operations. The system did not change its nature. It revealed it. On the evening of September 7th, the process began in earnest. Legal representatives were present, not to question outcomes, but to ensure formal compliance. Documents were prepared. Timelines were set. Groups of prisoners were brought forward in sequence. Each step followed established procedure, giving the entire operation an appearance of order and legitimacy. For those awaiting their turn, time became abstract. Prisoners were rarely told when their sentence would be carried out. This uncertainty was deliberate. Officials understood that ambiguity reduced resistance. Some individuals believed they were being transferred or questioned. Others were allowed to write final messages, many of which would never reach their families. These gestures maintained a thin illusion of humanity within a system designed to remove choice and agency. As the night progressed, the scale of the operation became unprecedented. The pace was relentless. Procedures repeated again and again, hour after hour. What distinguished this moment was not cruelty in the conventional sense, but normalization. Each action was treated as routine. Each name was another entry on a list. Under these conditions, errors occurred. In the confusion and haste, several individuals who were not under final sentence were included. When officials realized this, their response was revealing. There was no effort to halt the process, no attempt to acknowledge wrongdoing. Instead, records were altered. Names were added retroactively. The paperwork was adjusted to match the outcome. This response exposed the system's core priority: consistency over conscience. Accuracy mattered less than maintaining the appearance of control. Once an action had been taken, it was justified after the fact. Responsibility dissolved into procedure. The psychological impact on prisoners was profound. Many had spent months or years in isolation, deprived of reliable information, living under constant uncertainty. They could hear signals that marked stages of the process, knowing that their own turn was approaching, but never precisely when. This prolonged anticipation was itself a form of pressure, designed to wear down resistance without visible force. The strain extended beyond the imprisoned. Some staff members reportedly showed signs of exhaustion and distress in the days that followed. Requests for reassignment were made. Sleep and appetite were disrupted. Yet, within the leadership overseeing the operation, there was little sign of doubt. Efficiency was praised. Completion of orders was treated as professionalism. In later accounts, senior personnel described their role in technical language. They spoke of procedures, compliance, and obedience. Moral considerations were notably absent. Responsibility, they argued, lay with higher authority. Their task was execution of orders, not evaluation of justice. This mindset was not unique to one location or one group of individuals. It reflected a broader culture in which personal judgment was discouraged and institutional loyalty was rewarded. The system did not require everyone involved to be cruel. It required them to participate without questioning the whole. Over the following nights, the process continued. The same routines, the same documentation, the same emphasis on order. By mid-September, the backlog had been cleared. The pace slowed, not because of reconsideration, but because the immediate objective had been achieved. The machinery returned to its usual rhythm, having demonstrated its capacity. When Berlin fell in 1945, Plötzensee was found largely intact. The physical structures remained. Records were still in place. The silence that followed carried its own weight. What had taken place there was no longer hidden, but its meaning was still unfolding. Today, the site stands as a memorial. Names once reduced to numbers are recorded individually. Visitors walk through spaces designed for efficiency, now repurposed for remembrance. The walls and corridors are unchanged, but their purpose has shifted. What occurred at Plötzensee was not the result of chaos or loss of control. It was the outcome of deliberate design. A legal system was reshaped to serve authority, and authority was exercised without restraint. The events of those nights reveal how easily institutions can be redirected when power defines legality. The significance of Plötzensee lies not only in what happened there, but in how it was made possible. Step by step, procedure replaced judgment. Language softened reality. Responsibility was fragmented until no one felt accountable for the whole. This is why the story endures. Not as an anomaly, but as a warning about what can happen when systems prioritize obedience over conscience, and when justice becomes indistinguishable from administration. When authority demands silence and procedure replaces judgment, will we recognize the warning signs in time?